Hello YouTubers, this is Silver Smoke coming at you with a new video. There won't be any fancy tactical maneuvers or training tips I'm going to be offering today. Instead, I'll be discussing a topic which is somewhat topical, considering that we are 2 weeks away from the 2012 election, and I wanted to offer thoughts on common sense gun control, because I believe that we can they can actually establish that gun control as a logical policy initiative does not make sense. And I'll just go into some details on that in this video. I'm not going to mention the Second Amendment at all in this because even though it's a cornerstone of American tradition and culture, in regard to the right to keep and bear arms, a lot of you I know are coming into this debate and are totally and entirely sick of hearing it, because anytime someone asks a question about gun control, it's always a response of, well, Second Amendment right. And if you don't understand that, it's kind of like saying that we should have guns because God said so. It's kind of a cop out. So um, I live in a state where the Second Amendment is respected and in its Constitution, but not everyone who has a say on this issue is from a place like that. I grew up in Chicago, where, effectively speaking, there is no right to keep and bear arms, and that's the case for millions of people in this country. So, understandably, there's going to be a lot of folks that have no idea what that means, what that entails, and are utterly confused when people suggest that that's their exclusive reason why they should have the ability to own and carry and use firearms with a minimum or no government regulation. If you've never grown up under a place where the Second Amendment ever existed, obviously you're not going to have any idea of why that's important. So I'm not going to mention it beyond this point in the video. I will mention, however, that gun control as a policy initiative is a failure, and I'll explain it through several real-world situations, okay? There's been some talk in the debates recently by President Obama and several other politicians over the years that the assault weapons ban should be reconsidered for reauthorization, and I believe, based on my research on the subject, that that would be a serious mistake. See, the problem with gun control is that it's well intentioned. Okay, the intent of gun control is to reduce violent crime, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think we all can agree that more people getting shot is a bad thing. But when we look at the laws, okay, we have to evaluate whether or not a policy goal is effective based on its historical effect. Okay, if we look at the way society was before laws passed, and we look at it afterward, and then we can draw a conclusion on whether or not it's effective. We look at drunk driving laws, for example. Before DUI laws were and whatnot, vehicle accidents and deaths from DUIs were a pretty big problem. Then once DUI laws were passed and the results were, lesser deaths and lesser incidents, well, obviously you can see that DUI laws are having a positive effect. And you can draw your conclusions on the effectiveness of the policy based on that. Well, if you look at the assault weapons ban, from 1994 and 2004, the percentage of weapons used by criminals that were considered assault weapons, such as AR-15s, AK-47s, and the like, didn't change. In 1994, it was, I believe, 5% of total crimes committed with firearms, and between 1994 and 2004, it was the same amount, 5%. And then afterward, from 2004 till about 2008, when the last published survey was done by the Justice Department, same deal, but never changed, 5%. So if a gun law is passed and it doesn't reduce or affect anything, it's a failed policy. Whether you are pro-gun, anti-gun, Democrat, Republican, green, blue, whatever, okay? If we're going to look at a policy goal, we have to decide it based on whether it's effective. And we can't be passing laws. We shouldn't, as a society, pass laws that we know are a concrete failure. And that's just one example of how the assault weapons ban didn't do anything. So we can't support it on the basis of logically reducing crime. This is something that even if you hate guns, all right, we can appreciate on a logical perspective that this isn't a proper course of action because it's ineffective. Simple as that. Let's look at other cities, okay, which have strong gun laws, such as Washington, D.C., Chicago, Baltimore, New York City. These are all places which have very stringent gun laws, very, very restrictive requirements for owning firearms, and for the most part, most people don't have the time, resources, or ability to legally go through the steps to own a firearm in those places. So if the theory is that strong gun laws equate to lesser violence, we would see that in cities where guns are easier to acquire and in cities where guns are harder to acquire, there would be a clear difference. And there is, but unfortunately, it's the wrong direction. Murders in Chicago are so high that we actually have more people getting killed in that city than we lose in war casualties overseas right now. And the reason I'm actually making this video partly is because a friend of mine actually got shot at in the city of Chicago recently. And in Chicago, you can't own a firearm legally unless you jump through some very specific bureaucratic hurdles to do so. And despite those hurdles and despite those well intentioned regulations on firearms, we still have a murder situation that's pretty out of hand. I mean, we're talking about 15, 20 people being shot in the city on a weekly basis. So, and maybe one or two are actually killed, okay? So, clearly, strong gun laws are not the answer to this problem of violence. Okay, what the answer is, we have to figure out. That's part of our role as society. We have to figure out ways of solving this problem. Maybe it's a cultural adjustment we need to make. Maybe we need to change our educational system. It's a question that we need to derive a serious answer to. Washington D.C. is no different, actually, in this regard of how, even though it has strong gun laws, people are still being killed in a massive prodigious amount. So, we in California too. That's another place where, even though there are strong gun laws in Los Angeles and San Francisco, murder and homicide, is not an unfrequent occurrence there. Homicide detectives aren't hunting for work in places like Chicago and D.C. and Los Angeles. Wish they would, but that's not the factual case. So we have to ask the question: if we're trying to control violence in America, you know, um, gun control is not the answer. What is the answer? Well, we have to figure it out. We have to ask questions. We have to figure out data. We have to derive an answer. But the answer is not what we've been doing. If gun control is the answer, then clearly Chicago, D.C., and all those places with strong gun laws would not have a violence problem. But they do. So what the answer is, I'm not going to be able to figure it out. I'm just one guy. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and claim that I have some magical solution to the problem. Um, but clearly, gun control as a policy goal of at any level, state, federal, whatever, is not doing anything to stop violent crime. And we need to consider that, before you lend any support to gun control, a politician who supports gun control, or initiative that supports gun control, you have to ask yourself and ask the person advocating it whether it's effective. And if it's not effective, why are we backing it? Okay, you know, I understand that people want to say that guns should be controlled because of violence and the potential thereof. That's understandable. But at the same time, if you have a problem, you need to actually have a viable solution for it. If your car is having mechanical problems and it's got say a flat tire, okay, you don't say, well, my car has a flat tire, and I realize that driving on it continuously on a flat tire is not going to reinflate it or repair it, but I'm going to keep driving on it anyway because we have to send a message that I'm still going to get to work on time regardless. I mean, that's not going to solve your problem. You still got a flat tire. You still need to fix it. You still need to do something to correct the problem. And symbolism is not going to get you to work any easier, and it's not going to fix your wheel. Okay, so um, whenever we have a problem like violence, okay, not just gun violence, but knife violence, homicides, whatever, we need to come up with a better solution than what we've been trying because it clearly hasn't been working. So, if you have any questions on this, please post on my web zone. I don't have the ability to monitor it 24/7, but I will do my best to come back and respond to comments on the matter. Intelligent comments I'll definitely pay some attention to. But hopefully this opens the eyes of certain people that never really thought of the issue that way before because, again, I'm stressing that I'm not trying to focus on this as a rights-based issue, okay? That's a totally separate topic that I could go on for years and years and years, okay, about discussing. So, I want to stay away from that and just focus on the logical perspective. And the perspective is simple, all right? If a policy doesn't work, we can't use it. We shouldn't use it. And gun control over the past 30, 40, 50 years, ever since the 60s, has had plenty of opportunity to show a benefit to the American people and the people of the world if you look at other countries. And it hasn't shown anything yet. So if something doesn't work, we need to not use it. And that's my take on gun control and the laws thereof. Um, Questions, comments, concerns, leave in my web zone. Otherwise, safe travels, straight shooting. Take care.